welcome everyone. Appreciate everybody joining tonight. Should go about 20-25 minutes, somewhere on there. There'll be a time at the end to ask questions. If you do have questions during the presentation on a specific slide, I'm going to have everybody muted. So just raise your hand to alert me that you have a question, and I will unmute you. And then we'll go back to having everybody muted so that there isn't any background noise. Again, appreciate everybody joining me, and I'm going to set everybody on mute, and we'll get going. Tonight's presentation will touch upon fundraising for care as either a patient or a caregiver, and for treatment, as well as a lot of individuals experience difficulties while trying to obtain treatment. They have to leave work, they have to take an absence from work. So I'm going to go through some basics. This is a very, very expansive and developing topic, given social media and the internet and the availability of crowdfunding websites to actually fundraise. A little bit about background. That's my biography up there in terms of what I'm currently involved with. I got involved in fundraising for care and treatment, and now for medical research as a result of my 27-month-old daughter's diagnosis back in April 2008 with a brain tumor. She was terminal upon diagnosis. She battled for 33 months. Along the way, I was unable to really maintain my job. Her mother was unable to as well. We both took leaves of absence, and bills mounted, and learned a lot. Now, in my role as the executive director of a childhood cancer organization, as well as a medical laboratory, I've gotten involved in fundraising efforts for equipment and for research, but I also have helped other individuals fundraise for care and treatment, as well as when they experience difficulties with their bills. It's a very, very complex situation. So we are going to go through the need. Why do we need to fundraise during critical care times? Just a general primer on fundraising, some of the considerations. And then I'll talk about some of the resources that are available, and then go into some tips, other considerations, and then we'll have time for questions. Like I said, it's a lot to cover within a 20 to 25-minute period, and at the end I'll give out my email address and ways to contact me if you do have any questions. I can try and offer you some assistance and some guidance. In terms of the need, okay, it's clear that out-of-pocket costs are rising. Medical coverage, in most instances, has high deductible levels. You may need to obtain treatments that aren't covered by insurance. And then, as I said, if you are the patient or if you're the caregiver, you may not be able to work. You may have to take a leave of absence. So fundraising for paying off high out-of-pocket costs, deductible levels, basic necessities of life, if you can't work, food, rent, utility bills, paying for your car insurance. These are all things that individuals dealing with serious medical issues face. By entering into the fundraising or crowdfunding world, you can help defer some of these costs. And in a lot of cases, you can actually exceed your necessities, putting you in a much better position for future care. There are so many different issues that arise during the course of dealing with a medical issue as a patient or a caregiver that you just can't foresee. One example is when my daughter was at the end of her fight with her tumor. There was a treatment that we wanted to try up in New York, up at Sloan Kettering. It was the only facility that offered this treatment. And sometimes with clinical trials, be it for cancer or other diseases, you hope that they're available in more institutions. But this particular treatment was only available at Sloan Kettering. I'm in the Washington, D.C. area. Every week we had to travel up to New York. We had to pay our way up there. We had to find a place to stay, food, travel costs, gas, train, you name it. Those were all out-of-pocket expenses that impacted us throughout the course of my daughter's fight. And so if you're hit with a diagnosis that is debilitating, finding a way to cover costs, if you're not independently wealthy or you don't have insurance that's covering 100%, is a need. It's a necessity. I became involved with a family in my area that immigrated from Ethiopia a couple of years back, and they were professionals in the country. The mother was an RN, father was a pharmacist. They left Ethiopia to give their 2 young daughters a better life. When they came over to the States, they settled in Virginia. They were working towards their individual licensure, and unfortunately, their oldest daughter was diagnosed with the same type of cancer that my daughter had. Unable to work, unable to finish their licensure. They were threatened with eviction. They couldn't pay for their utilities. They couldn't pay for their car to travel back and forth to taking their daughter to obtain her treatment. So I got involved and helped them out by connecting them with a number of organizations that were able to assist them and cover their rent and take care of out-of-pocket expenses. But it is a real fear. And a lot of people in the childhood cancer world ultimately end up declaring bankruptcy because they can't afford to continue on after their child's diagnosed or after their child's been treated. So the need is definitely real. Fundraising generally. This is a topic that people go to college for, which I did not go to school for development or fundraising. This has been on-the-job training with me and on the in the real world training for me as well. Through my efforts in what I'm involved in professionally, I've been able to get involved with campaigns that have raised $50,000, $60,000 at a time. Other campaigns that have raised far less. I've raised money for pieces of equipment for laboratories, things like that. But there are accessible avenues now for fundraising for mere mortals. All of you are obviously on a computer now watching the presentation and listening in. That gives you access to sites that I'll talk about in the next slide or two, that you can set up your own fundraising campaign. The question isn't setting it up. You've got to ask yourself a lot of the who, what, where, when, and hows underneath that, because it's now more accessible than ever to go on social media and talk about your cause, talk about why you have a need. So when you're thinking about fundraising, if there is a treatment that you're seeking and it has a specific dollar amount to it, and it's not covered by insurance, or it's above what your insurance will pay, or you don't have insurance that will even cover half of it, you've got to figure out how much you need to raise. There's a specific treatment for children with cancer and other individuals with cancer at a clinic that runs approximately $80,000 to $85,000. It's controversial. A lot of people swear by it. Some people don't, but it should be everybody's choice to choose whatever treatment they see fit to obtain. Insurance doesn't cover it. You have to pay for it up front. So that's pretty easy to figure out how much right there. Other times you can't figure that out. You've just got to do your best to try and estimate what you need and what necessities arise. If you're trying to fundraise because you can't maintain your job and you need to have assistance paying for bills, paying for rent, paying for your mortgage, then those are expenses that you too should have some concept as to how much you're looking for. You need to be realistic about that amount, and I'll talk about that when we get to a couple slides down when I'm talking about fundraising tips. Who are you going to ask? Everybody has their own networks. Everybody has some family, some friends, social networks, work. This is something that you have to think long and hard about. People may or may not ultimately want to hear your plea or hear about your plight. Everybody has their own cross to bear, so to speak. So trying to figure out how you're going to fundraise within the platforms that are available it's critical. Going to your network, and when I say network, I'm now talking about your circle, your family, friends, job, church, synagogue, mosque, whatever it may be. Going to your network, got to be careful how many times you dip your toe in that water, because you can burn through your network very quickly. And at a certain point, people don't want to hear about it. Who will you ask? Trying to get outside your network is very key and critical if your need is great. And again, I'll talk about this a little bit further on in the presentation, but do some research. Take a look at some of the sites that we'll talk about. See what's been successful. Some of it is hit or miss. Some of it is there's no rhyme or reason to what ultimately takes off. You see these viral fundraising campaigns that just spring up out of nowhere, and before you know it, the person's raised hundreds of thousands of dollars. It always surprises me. There's no rhyme or reason sometimes. So trying to do what works, or at least what you see working, is key. How long do you have to raise the funds? Let's say you're diagnosed with a fast or aggressive cancer, and you want to go to this clinic that I talked about, and you don't have a tremendous amount of time, and you think it's your only option. You've got to figure out a way to make your campaign take off quickly. Or if you have something, and I'll use, for example, childhood cancer, because that's the world that I know best. If your child is diagnosed with acute lymphocytic leukemia, which is the most common childhood cancer, has a 94% cure rate overall. That's the good news. The bad news is the treatment can be anywhere from 18 months to 3 years, depending on how the child responds. You may not work for 18 months or 3 years, because during that period of time, you're going to be in the hospital with your child a lot. The chemotherapies used destroy the child's immune system. They cause a whole host of issues. And somebody's going to be in the hospital with that child the whole time. You've got a longer, more protracted period of time to raise the funds than in the first instance, where you've got a very aggressive disease that needs to be attacked quickly. Do you have help? Who is going to help you? Again, if a family member or a friend wants to assist you, and it's you personally that needs the money because you need treatment or you can't work, it's best to hopefully have help so that it's not on your shoulders. You focus on your medical care, and if you have a family member or a friend who can assist you in the fight, then it alleviates that pressure from you on your shoulders. But there's other risks associated with that as well. I chose to put the image of the key there, because I think a lot of these points are the first initial key to unlocking what you want to do and how you want to do it. Okay. Does anybody have any questions as I'm finishing these slides here? If not, I'm going to keep moving, keep everything going. The next slide is talking about what resources are available to help you. Like I said, if you have a computer, which apparently everybody does because you're listening in and watching, then you have access to a whole host of resources to assist you in raising funding for treatment or bills or research. Frankly, I've seen campaigns where people have been so successful and raised so much money that their bills are taken care of, their treatment is taken care of, and then they have money to give back. And they can donate it to research or donate it to the hospitals where they're treated, or the clinician, or donate it to, if you're dealing with pediatric disease, child life specialists. The first things first is you've got to select your platform. And there's more sites than I'm listing here that are available, but these are some of the most popular, and these are probably some of the best sites for medical fundraising, and you can check them out yourself. GoFundMe, I think everybody's heard of. Help Hope Live, Give Forward, Healthline, Fundraiser. These are platforms that if you just poke around on them, you'll see what people have done. I mean, they've raised hundreds of millions of dollars through these sites. And so just point number 4, Google or Yahoo or whatever search engine you want to use. Research, research, research. There's no use reinventing the wheel. People have been fundraising now for a number of years on these crowd funding platforms. You might as well take what works and make it your own. But first things first is you've got to figure out how you want to do it. The first time I tried to do any type of fundraising, I just used Facebook, and I used email. And I went through my email contact list, and I just sent out a blast email, and it told people what was going on and what we needed. And through Facebook and email, I think I was able to raise a little under $10,000, give or take, in about a month and a half, 2 months, give or take. So it can be as simple as that. It doesn't need to be anything formal, such as a crowdfunding platform. But if your need is greater than that, you should look at one of these crowdfunding platforms. Another amazing resource that I don't think people look to and research enough are nonprofit organizations. Frankly, a lot of them have support grants. When my daughter was diagnosed, we joined a number of communities that provided support grants, small in nature, $1,000, $2,000 here and there, but that helps and it adds up. So point number 4 is, again, I bring that up to you. Google and research, 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 and be creative. Okay. If you think about what you're trying to do, you're trying to rally your troops, and you're trying to go beyond your own circle for a specific need. These 5 tips are something that I think they're all critical in their own right, but taken together should form the basis of the questions that you're asking yourself as you're trying to go out and fundraise. Going back to how much, number 1 dovetails with that. Set realistic expectations. If in the first instance that I gave you, the clinic, you need to raise $80,000. Don't throw up a crowdfunding site asking for $500,000 or $100,000, or set it realistic. There's some science to that, whether you set it under what you think you need or you set it right at the amount. Sometimes you'll go on these sites and you'll see people that have asked for $10,000, and you see that their campaign has raised $50,000, $60,000, $70,000. Again, no rhyme or reason. They've just been able to get outside of their circle, and for some reason it's connected with people. So think about what you actually need. Think about what you need to do and how long you have to do it in, and don't overreach. Don't reinvent the wheel either. And this is something that I talked about a little bit ago. These platforms have built-in templates that you can put pictures on, that you can build your own story. It's your story. So you're going to have to invent that in whatever manner you tell your story, whether it's through Facebook, whether it's through Twitter, Instagram, email. You still have to tell your story. You've been diagnosed with disease X, you can't work, or your out-of-pocket expenses are mounting, co-pays are mounting, or there's an experimental treatment that isn't covered that you're trying to gain access to. It's your story. Make it personal. That ties in with number 3, make it emotional, which I'll come into in a second here. But last thing I want to say about do not reinvent the wheel. Again, do your homework. Research to see what's worked, what hasn't worked, and tweak it. Make it emotional. It's your story. When I go out there and try and raise money now for the organizations I work for childhood cancer research and to help support families, I often talk about my daughter. And it's very emotional to me. It's very personal to me. But I also talk about the kids and the families that we help, because that's what connects. We're human beings, and most of us thankfully still have a heart and are able to connect with other people on a personal and emotional level. And that's what sells. And you wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't an emotional need, if it wasn't a necessity. I won't say that everybody that throws up a crowdfunding site or tries to fundraise has the best intentions. The universe has a way of figuring out who's authentic and who isn't. There are people that pop up on Facebook all the time that show pictures of children with cancer, or talk about how they've been diagnosed with some disease, and ultimately they're found out that they don't have an illness, and they're reported and hopefully prosecuted. People do take advantage of people, but this is your story, so tell it. Go all in. Don't do it halfway. If you're going to do it and you have a need, it is important to put the effort into it and put the time into it. If you see it's not working, tweak it. Ask for help. There are generally people within all of these crowdfunding platforms that you can ask for assistance. Ask your family, ask your friends if they can help you out to try and spread the word. It's like the old commercial, the shampoo commercial. You tell 2 friends and they'll tell 2 friends and they'll tell 2 friends. Well, that's the way things go viral, right? You put something on one of your social media sites, on Facebook or Twitter, you put a video up there, people start sharing it, all of a sudden it explodes. It's the same concept here if you're trying to raise funds for your treatment or to survive. Trying to break free and asking people for assistance is key. It's not easy. Most of us are very proud, and I had a lot of pride, and I still do have a lot of pride, but when push came to shove and I needed to get my daughter to New York for treatment, you have to swallow your pride, and don't do it halfway. And then number 5, do your homework, do your research, choose your platform wisely. Crowdfunding platforms like GoFundMe, Fundraise, Help Hope Live, they work by giving you the platform, giving you the ability to mass email and send out to your networks, but they take a percentage in the end of everything that you raise. Some take more than others. It's up to you to do your homework to see what you think works best, which platform works best for what you need, and then just be aware of what ultimate costs there are, not out of your pocket necessarily, but out of your campaign. And so again, it behooves you to really do your homework before just going and throwing up a website. Final considerations that you should think about is, do you need the funds? There are some people that probably go out and crowdfund or ask for money that don't need it. Only you can decide what your needs are, where they lie, and what you have to do about it. Understanding what fees apply to contributions. Again, do your homework, take a look at the sites. There's a lot more than the 4 or 5 that I put in here, but those are the ones that I think people recognize as the more popular medical-based crowdfunding. If you look at GoFundMe, there's people that are trying to fundraise to take a vacation or to do a cross-country bicycle ride to raise money for a certain disease. And then there's people who have lost a spouse and have children and are trying to fundraise so that they can pay their mortgage, pay their rent. And then there's individuals that are trying to look for money to help pay for treatment. Just do your research. How are people going to react to your request for funding? This is something that may or may not be a concern to you. Number 4 is, do you care how people react to your requests? What I found through my daughter's diagnosis and through her treatment, and now afterwards, as I'm actually working in the childhood cancer nonprofit world and asking people for money for research, and one of the programs that I work with is supporting families who have a child in active treatment and are experiencing difficulty paying their bills. At a certain point, you can't keep asking people for money, regardless of your need, because they're going to get burnt out. So how's your family going to react to it? How are your friends? How is your network or your circle going to react if you continue to ask? How you ask them? These are discussions and questions that only you can answer. 2 important points that are listed in number 5 and number 6 are points that I want to throw out there, but I can't give any type of indication as to, sorry about that, as to whether or not you will have to deal with this. But just be wary that you could risk losing Medicaid benefits if you raise too much money. So know what the thresholds are in your specific instance. There could be tax implications as well to the money that you raise. If it's listed as a gift, it may be easier to argue that it's not taxable. If it's listed as something else, then you may face tax consequences. So you need to talk to somebody about that to determine whether or not you're ultimately going to pay taxes on money that you raise. Hopefully you have somebody to help you out. You can research it. You can always talk to folks at the crowdfunding sites. They may not be able to specifically give you an idea, but just be aware that that possibility exists. And then finally, protecting yourself. So there have been a number of cases where individuals have offered to help people that are in desperate situations raise money. They help them with crowdfunding. They throw up a site. They go out on social media raising money. Money comes in, they do well, and then the person vanishes or disappears. And the individual that was raising the money or needs the money is left because they've already gone to their circle. They've already gone to the network. They've had this fundraising site or this fundraising ask, and unfortunately somebody took advantage of them. So just be careful what you're doing, because as I said, this isn't something that I really need to educate people on, but there are people that will take advantage and try and scam and try and take your money. After my daughter died, we were going to file our taxes that year, and because we had so many medical bills piling up, we deferred them, and we were working with an accountant, and it was October. going to file them, and I got a call from the accountant that that we couldn't file them electronically. Somebody had stolen my daughter's identity. They used her social security number to file a tax return, claiming her either as a benefit or claiming that they were her. Ultimately, what happened is somebody got a hold of her social security number, her date of birth, date of death, address, full name, and it was probably because of one of several reasons. Genealogy sites used to put the information out, and on top of that, when we were trying to raise money for bills, we put her out there. We put the information out there, and somebody capitalized on it. It costs the federal government, or it used to before legislation was enacted, cost the federal government around $1.6 billion a year, that type of fraud. So just know what you're getting into and know what you're getting involved in ahead of time. And if you need assistance, there are people that are out there that are willing to offer any help that you may need. Like I said, I could go through this for several days, helping people to put up sites and talk about the necessity and talk about the everything that you need to think about when you're entering into the world of crowdfunding or need help and need it quickly and what to do and where to do that. So hopefully everybody's found this helpful. I'll go ahead and unmute everybody, and if there are questions, feel free to jump right in. Does anybody have questions? Nobody?
Yeah, I have a question.
Conscience bothering you
Sure.
know, between he and he God.
Jonathan, one sec.
Okay.
His contract. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. If you have no network at all, and and this is a complete surprise. I mean, a lot of people are not on Facebook and these other social networking sites, and they're just basically working every day, and then suddenly they're faced with a terrible situation, and there's no real so-called network on which they can depend. How can they begin to build a network, number one, and then what should they do?
Sure. So one of the things that you can do is, obviously, for us that are here tonight, you've got access to a computer and internet service. Most diseases have organizations that are specific to that disease that you can Google and take a look at the platforms that exist and the communities that are built into the disease population. But let's say you don't have access to the internet, access to a computer, or let's say your disease isn't necessarily categorized, and you don't know where to turn. It becomes a little bit more difficult in terms of getting help, in terms of quote unquote building and growing a network. That's when asking family or friends or acquaintances if they can assist you, and trying to grow it on the grassroots level is critical. It's not easy. It becomes more difficult at that point if you don't have that built-in network, if you don't have access to the technology to crowdfund, if you're not a part of the social media network, Facebook, the built-in platforms, then you've got to become creative and looking for organizations that can assist you, nonprofit organizations, talking to your family, talking to friends, talking to acquaintances. If you're getting medical treatment, there's social work teams that are in each facility that can help you and possibly work with you and help you navigate or you can have access to a computer at the clinic or at the hospital while you're there. You just got to be a little bit more creative. You've got to hustle a little bit more. But, you know, there's avenues to do it. I'm not going to tell you that it's easy, and I'm not going to tell you that I have a tremendous amount of experience with that, not having had that experience of being without a network. So it's tough. Oh, sorry. Anybody else have any questions?
That's what I thought. Is he here? No, he waited around, but then he
Anyone?
grocery store.
Okay. Well, I hope that people have things to think about. You know, obviously in a 20, 25-minute presentation, great depth and detail. It's such a complex topic, and there's so many different issues when you're talking about trying to fundraise or trying to get assistance during the course of a life-threatening illness, be it for yourself, your family member, or for a friend. But there are a lot of resources out there that exist, and it's a matter of just trying to tap into them, and then trying to ask for assistance in whatever direction you need it in. So I appreciate everybody joining tonight, and if you have any questions, I can, what I'll do is next time, or I can put up on the Brightbud site, I can put my email address out there so that you can email me and try and get in touch with me. I'm pretty easy to find ultimately. So thank you, everyone.